Youorns. Greetings for the Watford fans, Omar here, and it's time for the Orns 10-minute take on Watford 2, Bristol City 0. It was a funny old game at the Vic as Watford defeated Bristol City 2-0, but it's interesting because you look at this game and you wonder how on earth Bristol City didn't even manage to get a goal, let alone a point. It was the rub of the green for Watford, I think, in this game. Two of their goals, both of their goals, were goals that really came from mistakes that Bristol City made. An own goal after just 6 minutes from a former Luton Town player named Harry Connick, giving Watford the early 1-0 lead. But Watford did not press an advantage after that. They seemed to sit off of Bristol City, and the Bristol City side, led by the former Watford manager Nigel Pearson, kept pushing and pushing. In fact, they had about 63% of the possession in this game. It was really strange stuff. Watford sat off of Bristol City as if content with the 1-0 lead at home before they began to take control of this game a little bit, at least in the second half. Bristol City had so many opportunities to score. It was one of those kinds of games that if Bristol City had their shooting boots on and their finishing boots on, there certainly would have been a very different result to talk about after this game today. Be that as it may, Watford rode their fortunes out with the second half goal coming from João Pedro in roughly the 54th, 55th minute. He got his 11th goal of the season. Kone came on for the substituted Bacuna, and Kone's pass to João Pedro was met around the 18-yard box with João Pedro's shot that was lashed fiercely into the direction of the goalkeeper, into the back of the net. But the goalkeeper could have done better and should have done better with the shot. I think the sun got in his eyes, and maybe a Bristol City player also got in his way, and that affected him, and the ball went into the top of the net, the roof of the net. 2-0, thank you very much. And that was that. Although Bristol City still had a number of chances after that to score. Nahki Wells had hit the crossbar with a free kick, and that was just before the second goal. And after that, Nahki Wells had a great chance one-on-one, but could not hold on to the ball, kind of stumbled over the ball before composing himself to take the shot. He never got that shot off, and that was that. There were some great saves in this game from Daniel Bachmann, kept Watford ahead of Bristol City thanks to some really good saves. His first game back from suspension, I thought Daniel Bachmann looked much sharper than he had in recent weeks. Really looked good diving for the ball, covered his angles very well. I thought Daniel Bachmann did, I think after the game suspension, really did have time to think about things, and I think he certainly pulled off a really good performance today for Watford. Now, look, as far as performances go for the team at large, this is not one of those that can go down in the annals of Watford history. But the point is that Watford got the 3 points. They got a clean sheet, which is very important as well. They've not had a clean sheet victory since the game against Birmingham, which was, 3.5 weeks ago, if not more. The second game under Chris Wilder. This is the second win under Chris Wilder. It's the third or fourth win that Watford have had on a Saturday this season in the Championship. And also it's only the third win in their last 15 Championship games. That's how poor it's been for Watford. But at least they get to move closer to these playoff spots. Although, again, I think the season's over for Watford, and they should be focusing much more on rebuilding the team, as they were supposed to do at the beginning of the season, and make sure that there's a 3 to 5 year plan on building this team around a nucleus of younger players, academy players like Ryan Andrews, who had a fantastic game again today. Ryan Andrews now two Championship games for Watford. He's been immense in both of them, particularly the game against Coventry. But I also thought he did well today, and I give him the Orns man of the match because he was composed and solid, disciplined, and rarely put a foot wrong. A shining example, just 18 years old, to the rest of the side, some of whom are considerably older than he. But Ryan Andrews, for me, is the man of the match of this game, the Orns man of the match. And he played with purpose, precision, poise, and patience, which is actually not what a lot of the other Watford players had today. Ismaila Sarr made a number of decisions that I thought were ill-advised, and he paid the price for them as he got the ball dispossessed, but he didn't even try to fight back to win the ball back. He didn't try to run back to try to chase the player who had just taken the ball off of him. And if I were in his position, I'd have at least a bit of pride about myself to actually try to work to get that ball back, but he didn't. And so that was met with a few boos. And there were a few, talking about met with boos, there were Vicarage Road was met with lots of empty seats today in the Sir Elton John stand, in the Anne Swanson family stand, and also in parts of the Rookery, as I think a number of Watford supporters have got the message that change needs to happen at the club. And by their absence, even though the tickets are probably paid for already, obviously, by season tickets, these Watford fans are sending a message, I think, to the hierarchy, and I hope these protests continue. Now, I've heard that there was a banner that was taken down and fans ejected from the ground again today. This time, apparently, a Watford supporter who told me that he had gone to the game at the Vic today said that there was an ejection of several fans who held up a banner saying, Gino out. Now, again, I don't know if the banner was to specifications. If it was, then there should not have been an ejection of those fans, according to, again, a Watford supporter that I was conversing with earlier today. But the bottom line is that amidst all the turmoil and all the nonsense and all the noise and all the other distractions that are very unhealthy and unhelpful to this club, Watford players today got over the line against a Bristol City side who were bang on average, but they were above average today with their effort and persistence and desire. And had those had those Bristol City players lived up to what they were doing the last few games, they were unbeaten in the last three, they would have got at least a point out of this game. So, Watford can be thankful. I think Watford's composure when it really counted was good. I thought there was a number of key plays that were made, but the defense is still very troubling. Even with this win, the Watford defending today was not good. The midfield was absent today. I think Bacuna was not right for this game in terms of the alignment, and you saw Kone come in and do a better job, but it was Bristol City's midfield that bossed this game throughout. And the Bristol City, I think, controlled a lot of this game. That happens in the championship. Sometimes you will have games where you are dominating with possession, but you're not doing anything with it. And that's exactly what happened with Bristol City today. They dominated us on possession, but they really didn't do a lot with it. They certainly didn't finish their chances. And so that's the reason why Watford won this game. But again, Watford did not play like a team who was 2-0 up. They played like a team who was trailing by 2-0. And I keep saying Brighton. I don't know why. But Bristol City were playing like a team who were in the ascendancy at 2-0, looking for a third. I think Watford have to do what they will have to do going forward here in these final 4 games is learn how to consolidate a lead and learn how to play with a lead with conviction. I think Watford lacked conviction today. They returned to some of the old bad habits, passing the ball slowly, passing the ball poorly, not executing fundamentals in football. When you get the ball dispossessed from you, you don't stand there like Ismail Assar did. You fight back and you try to run and get the ball back. Look, I'm not trying to take any gloss off of this 2-0 win. It's a welcome win. It's an about time win. And it's a win that I think will make the players feel good and inject them with some confidence. But the question now becomes consistency. And I think now that Watford should be focusing on what they've got for next season right now, because the future is now. And I think Watford need to be playing more academy players like a Ryan Andrews, like a James Morris, like a number of others like Adrian Blake. These are the kinds of players who need to be playing a role in these final 4 games of this championship season to see where they are, to show you what you've got on the field, to put them in live action in real life league conditions in the championship and let them sort their way through and let them compose themselves. It's an important and very valuable experience to put those players in the mix. Toby Adeyemo is not one of them, of course. He just had a contract signed last week. He signed to a professional contract. I think now what Chris Wilder needs to do while he is still here managing at this club is to play the youth, play these academy players, see what you've got. You can at least get an idea of what you know that they can do on the pitch and what they can't. It would provide an excellent springboard, I think, for Ben Manga to do what he needs to do in the offseason in terms of recruitment and everything else to get the right balance and nucleus of players in here And I think that that's going to be key because the bunch of players that we have are not playing together as a team, they're playing as individuals. And you saw some of that today. And even with this win, which I'm very happy about, I'm very proud that we got this thing done, even though, again, it wasn't the greatest performance because this time of year, it's not even about performance, but you want the attitude to be better. And I didn't see the attitude today from Watford being the way it should be. They got their second goal against the run of play. And sometimes, again, it's better to be lucky than good. And I think, in all, though, Watford did put together an effort. They weren't, nearly as dominant in any spell of this game as Bristol City was, and maybe only for a few minutes in the second half that they posed a threat. But generally speaking, it's been much of that very up and down, inconsistent pattern of play from blocks of halves to blocks of halves to the second half that really continues to bedevil Watford as we get to these final four games. Watford are in 12th place as of the time of this recording, and they are on 59 points, 3 points away from the playoffs. But don't forget, Blackburn Rovers will play coming up against Hull City. Very important game there, of course. If Blackburn were to drop points, Watford would still probably be looking very closely at the playoffs. But and I don't think they're making the playoffs, but if Blackburn were to win the game, it would be pretty much a tall task then for Watford, even though they'd be 5 or 6 points back. It's still a big task, and they've got to win all 4 of these games. Only one of the 5 teams above them on the way to the playoffs is a team that Watford face again. Only one, and that's Sunderland, and that's the Sunderland game, second to last game of the season. And by then, Watford's official fate could be sealed. But the bottom line is that this team, I think now needs a fresh set of everything. And I mean, it needs a complete overhaul. And I hope that we get that in the offseason. João Pedro, I expect, will be leaving. I've said this all along. I think he will. Would hate to see him go. But look, he has to move on and develop his career because I don't think he's going to develop it amid the mess that is Watford Football Club. I also would like to say here at this point that, as I said, there were lots of empty seats. I think the protests are important. They've got to be peaceful and respectful at all times. And we've also got to strategize about what the moves are and what the suggestions will be. It's a really important thing to see Watford fans finally voting with their feet and sending a message to the club that changes must be made. And certainly, I think that is a good thing. Watford on the pitch, meanwhile, they get a priceless win, 2-0 over Bristol City against a former manager of the club as well, Watford club, and that would be Nigel Pearson. And also the idea that now Watford are on 59 points, just 3 points outside the playoffs before Blackburn take on Hull. So there we go. Watford today with the win. They've got to repeat that, though, against Cardiff on Wednesday night at the Vic. It's the second of 3 games in a week. And if anybody can do it, Watford can. And I'm talking about win the game, not make the playoffs, because I think now the playoffs are done. And I've said that for a long time. Well, look, this was a positive game for Watford. They got the 3 points. And now who knows what happens next? We'll see on Wednesday night. This has been the YouOrns 10-minute take.